A trumpet sounds across a hillside. Citizens drop their tools, leave their farms and their shops, and start walking toward one place. They are gathering to vote on war, to elect leaders, to govern their city. That is not a description of ancient Athens on some ordinary Tuesday. That is the exact word Jesus used for what he was building, the word translated church in your Bible more than 100 times. Not a building, not a religious service, a political assembly with actual authority, actually gathering to actually decide things. Stay with me, because this single word changes what you think you've been part of your entire life. Let's start with where our English word church actually comes from, because it isn't even a translation of the Greek word Jesus used. Church comes from an entirely different Greek term, kyriakon, meaning belonging to the Lord, a word that describes a building, a physical structure set apart for worship. The kind of word that eventually gave us kirk in Scottish English and kirche in German. That word, kyriakon, never appears anywhere in the New Testament, not a single time, in any verse, in any manuscript. The word Jesus and the apostles actually used, the word translated as church in your English Bible more than 100 times, is an entirely different word altogether. Ekklesia. And ekklesia has nothing to do with a building at all, historically or linguistically, from its very first recorded use. So what did ekklesia actually mean before Jesus ever used it? This is not a religious term Jesus invented from scratch for the occasion, coining it on the spot. It was already a well-established, widely understood word in Greek political life, centuries old by the time Jesus spoke it out loud to his disciples that day. In Athens specifically, the Ekklesia was the actual formal name of the city's governing assembly, a gathering of adult male citizens who met regularly, roughly 40 times a year, to vote directly on war, foreign policy, and the election of magistrates. This tradition traced back at least to Draco in the 7th century before Christ, and was formalized further by the lawgiver Solon a century later, who opened participation to citizens across different economic classes, not just the wealthy few. This wasn't a symbolic gathering or a quaint ceremonial tradition people attended out of polite habit. It was where real civic power actually lived and actually got exercised, with real consequences following real votes. That herald's trumpet, the same one you just pictured, was a real functioning summons, and the citizens who heard it would leave their homes, their farms, their shops, and physically assemble on a hillside called the Phoenix in one place to exercise real authority together. That assembly, that specific political body, with real teeth behind it, was called the Ekklesia. You can actually see this exact meaning preserved inside your own New Testament, in a passage most people read straight past without ever noticing what the word underneath it is actually doing in context. In Acts chapter 19, a riot breaks out in the city of Ephesus over a threat to the silversmith's idol trade. The crowd surging into the amphitheater chanting for 2 straight hours, confused and agitated, and the local city clerk finally calms the crowd down and tells them, if there is anything further you want to know, it must be settled in a legal assembly. The Greek word there, translated assembly, is ekklesia, the exact same word used for the church throughout the rest of the New Testament, without a single letter of difference. Luke actually uses this word 3 separate times in that one chapter alone, referring plainly to a civic town meeting, with zero religious meaning attached to it whatsoever, describing an actual legal political gathering with actual legal standing and actual consequences. This tells you something important right away, before we even get to Jesus' own use of the term a few chapters earlier in the story. Ekklesia was never primarily a churchy word waiting quietly to be invented by the early Christians. It was a governing word, already fully formed and functioning, that early believers borrowed and deliberately repurposed for something new. Now, you've probably heard the popular breakdown of this word before, that ekklesia comes from ek, meaning out of, and kaleo, meaning to call, so it technically means the called out ones. And I want to be honest with you here, because this is a place where I think most popular teaching oversells what's actually technically true about the word. That breakdown of the word's individual parts is accurate as far as it goes, at the level of raw etymology. But by the time of the New Testament, ekklesia had been a settled, completely ordinary word for centuries already. And ordinary Greek speakers weren't consciously hearing to call out from their homes every single time they used it in casual conversation, any more than you consciously think about butter and fly every time you say the word butterfly out loud at breakfast. Serious scholars are honestly, genuinely divided on how much weight that etymology should actually carry in Jesus' own specific use of the word, that day on that road. What is not divided among scholars, what is completely settled and universally agreed upon, is the concrete, plain meaning everyone in that world already understood the instant they heard it spoken aloud. An assembly, a specific, gathered body of people with real purpose and real authority, meeting together in one physical place at one specific time, for a specific reason. So when Jesus tells Peter, "On this rock I will build my Ekklesia, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it," he is not casually inventing a brand new word for a future religious service that didn't exist yet and had no precedent. He is reaching directly into two separate vocabularies at the exact same time, deliberately, with full awareness of both traditions simultaneously. First, the vocabulary of Greek civic government we just walked through in detail. And second, Jewish covenant history, because the Greek translation of the Old Testament, the Septuagint, had already been using the same word, Ekklesia, for generations, to translate the Hebrew word, Qahal, the assembly of Israel gathered before the Lord for sacred purposes. When Israel gathered at the base of Mount Sinai to receive the law directly from God, trembling at the sound of the trumpet and the sight of the mountain covered in smoke and fire, that gathering is called the Qahal in Hebrew, rendered Ekklesia. In the Greek translation, Jewish readers, scattered across the empire, actually use day to day, in synagogues far from Jerusalem. Moses later commands that the whole community read the law aloud together every 7 years specifically so this same assembly, this Qahal, would gather and hear it as one unified body, generation after generation. When Jesus uses this word, his Jewish listeners would have heard covenant assembly, the actual people of God gathered before him with real inherited identity and real inherited purpose stretching back centuries. His Greek-speaking listeners would have heard governing body, a gathering with actual, functioning civic authority to decide real matters. Both meanings were sitting inside this one word at the exact same time, layered directly on top of each other, and Jesus chose it deliberately, fully aware of everything it already carried into that conversation with Peter. Think about what this actually means for the picture sitting in your head right now when you hear the word church. Most of us picture a building first, a specific address you drive to on a specific morning of the week, with a parking lot and a particular set of doors. Some of us picture an event instead, a scheduled service with a particular order of songs and announcements and a sermon that runs roughly an hour. Jesus was pointing at neither of those things when he chose this word for what he was building. He was pointing at a gathered people who carry real authority and real purpose the moment they actually assemble together, the way Athenian citizens carried real authority the moment the trumpet called them together on the Pnyx, the way Israel carried real covenant identity the moment they gathered, trembling at the base of the mountain. Ekklesia was never a place you go to on a schedule and then leave. It was, and remains, a body you actually are, the moment you're gathered together with others who belong to the same assembly, wherever that gathering physically happens to occur, whatever day of the week it happens to be. Here's why this genuinely matters for how you think about this word tonight, practically, not just as an interesting historical footnote. If church has quietly become, for you, only a building you attend, a schedule you keep, an event you show up to and then mentally leave behind until next week rolls around again, you have shrunk a word that once meant an assembly with actual civic authority into something closer to a weekly appointment penciled onto a calendar. Ekklesia was never meant to describe a place you visit for an hour and then quietly depart from, unchanged. It described, and still describes today, a specific people, gathered with real purpose, carrying real weight when they actually come together, the same way the Athenian assembly carried real weight the moment the citizens actually gathered in one place and the trumpet stopped sounding and the real business of governing genuinely began. I want to leave you with something to actually think about this week. Not a task so much as a question worth carrying with you into your next Sunday morning. The next time you hear the word church, or use it yourself without thinking twice about it out of habit, ask what Jesus was actually picturing when he chose this specific word out of every single option available to him in either language he had full access to. Not a building standing empty most days of the week, waiting quietly for Sunday to arrive again. An assembly, summoned, gathered, carrying real purpose the moment it comes together. The gates of Hades unable to overcome it precisely because it was never a place that could be located on a map and destroyed by an approaching army. It was and is a people, wherever they happen to actually be standing together at any given moment. So here's my honest question for you tonight. Before this video, did you already know the word church never actually appears anywhere in your Bible, not even once, or is this genuinely the first time you're hearing that fact stated plainly? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I think about the people who write them long after I've actually read them. If this changed the picture in your head of what you're actually part of every time you gather with others, send it to someone who's never once been told the word they use every single week was borrowed straight out of Greek political life centuries before Jesus ever spoke it aloud to his disciples. Subscribe, because every week on this channel we go past the surface, into the original languages, into what the scriptures have actually been saying the whole time, underneath the familiar English words we've inherited without ever really examining where they came from. The word was never building, it was never event, it was assembly, gathered, called together, carrying real weight the moment it comes together as one body, in one place, for one purpose. Walk close and remember what you're actually part of every single time you gather. God bless you.